All right, so thanks everybody again for coming to PSAT Now What? I'm Anthony, and we are recording now. So for those of you who miss any information, you can follow it later. So we're starting a little bit late, and I apologize, and we'll get to all the information. So right now I'm going to share my screen, and you should be able to see my PowerPoint. Please let me know if you can in the chat box. Okay. If you can see my screen, please let me know. You don't have to write things down. You can, again, take notes, or my slides. These slides will be on my website at CUSD-Futureology. Okay, you guys can't see it. Okay, another great snafu here. Let me try this. Can you see that? Let me know if you can see that. Can you guys see that? And by the way, my name's not John. That's just a friend of mine. Were you able to see that? Great. Okay, so that works. So I'm going to share my screen again. All right, and it's going to be my PowerPoint. Okay. So here we go. So again, if you have questions or comments, please add those in the chat. I'll get to those as soon as I can. This is kind of a new platform for us for using webinars. All right. And then I might be asking you some questions throughout the night. Please feel free. But my 4 objectives for tonight are understanding your scores, number 1, deciding between the SAT or ACT, giving you some prep pointers, and talking about some next steps. Okay, and I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker just to catch up some time. So you guys had the benefits, or your students had the benefits of taking this PSAT, and it's the main thing. It was a practice test. Okay, it doesn't go on your record. It has no tie into admissions. Okay, so that's really a great thing. And for a lot of students, it just gives you the ability to find and pinpoint your strengths and weaknesses. So when we look at our students, again, yes, we want to see a score, but we want to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. PSAT Slayer, I don't know why your child's accommodations were not granted. That's with the school. I have no idea, and I don't know your child. I don't know. If it wasn't, it depends on their situation at school. I would go talk to your school and find out. And it could be the reason they might not get accommodations for the SAT or ACT. I don't know that. So that's something you'll have to check in whatever school that your son or daughter goes to. Okay. All right, so again, it's a great chance for practice. And then in addition, and I'll talk about it later, you can link these scores to your Khan Academy and get personalized practice. So this is a really great opportunity to start the conversation of college and career with your son or daughter, or if you're the student, with your parents, okay? Taking a step back, everybody, you need to understand that this is one piece of the puzzle. The SAT and the ACT is just one thing. There's more things that they look at when they're talking about factors of admission, from your grades, your test scores. And the tests, sometimes a lot of people put a lot of stock into it, and really dependent on the different schools. But I have a little slide here that test scores are important, but you're still the #1 predictor, or the #1 factor that goes into this process are your grades and your strength of curriculum, or the rigor that you have. That's always the top. Test scores, depending on the school as well, it's considerable or a moderate amount of importance, but there's some other things that also go into play as well. Also, whether it's a private school, a public school, a small school, there's going to have different weights around some of these factors. So make sure that you take a look at those schools and see where they place that weight. There's over 900 schools that don't even look at these test scores. Okay, so that's really important to understand as well. Okay. Let me go back one slide here. This is what the paper report would look like, but we're going to talk about getting your online report, okay? So your paper report, if you print it up online, they give you this, a report. It's like 4 pages or so, and you'll have your total score in the middle and then 2 scores on the right and left. But I'm going to show you how to log in to get your online scores. And that's where you actually go to studentscores.collegeboard.org, okay? And we're able to log in. Now you sign in with your College Board account, and if you don't have one, you want to actually click sign up, and you'll fill out some general information, okay? I stopped sharing my screen to just check on some of my questions here. All right, let's try this again. And there we go. So you're going to log in and you're going to fill in some extra information if you don't have an account yet. And if you do have an account, then you just click sign in and your scores should pop up. If your scores don't pop up, then you'll need to add the missing scores and fill out some other information like what you put on your Scantron and the name you put on your Scantron. It should be pretty simple. If you don't have your scores right now, then I would suggest logging on later tonight or tomorrow. And if you still have trouble, shoot me an email and we'll see what we can do, figure it out, okay? But once you have those score reports, this is what you're gonna get, okay? You're gonna have your PSAT score. Now, obviously it'll have the different timeline, not fall 2015. And you're gonna have a total score to the left over here, okay? So right here where it says 860, that's your total score. For my juniors and my sophomores, it's gonna be out of 1520. For my freshmen, it's gonna be out of 1440, okay? The SAT is out of 1600, but what they're gonna tell you is vertically aligned, okay? What that means is that you're able to match your score to an actual SAT, even though the scoring grid only goes to 1520 or 1440. If that's what you scored on the PSAT 860, that's what they expect you to score on the actual SAT. So for my juniors here, okay, or junior parents, if the score they're looking at is they're not happy with it, don't go in and take the March test and do nothing, because then you're going to get that score and it's going to be the same, okay? That's what they tell you. Okay, that's what's vertically aligned mean. That's what you would score. Okay, so with that, the left and the right, you have on the right side, you have your math score here, and then you have your evidence-based reading and writing. Okay, and that reading and writing score, again, these scores, both of them, on the SAT they're out of 800. On these they're out of 760. Okay, so this student scored better in math. So that's the first, is just the scoring and understanding the scoring. Out of 1520 or 1440, the SAT's out of 1600. And that's where you're standing. So this is kind of the initial score. We're going to look at a whole bunch of other scores, okay? Again, this is your paper report, but I'm going to show you the online report, okay? We talked about this. And again, if you guys have questions coming forward, just kind of ask those. If they pop up for me, then I'll be able to answer them as we go through, or I might tell you we get to it later. So this is what, I've got a question here. What is first-year student should take SAT? Anonymous, I have a question here. What is first-year student should take SAT or ACT? I'm not sure that question, what that means. Do you mean, should a first-year student, meaning a freshman, take the SAT or ACT? So if you can please re-ask that, I would really appreciate it. And then, guys, if you can ask those questions in the Q&A section, that's even better for me, because then I can write that I answered them or not, okay? All right, so if you can re-ask that and tell me exactly what you mean, I'm not sure what you're asking, okay? So here's the other reports. This is your math score and your reading and writing score. You're gonna have, again, a score range out of 760, if you're looking here. You're gonna have these, what we call benchmarks. You're gonna see these green, yellow, and red lines on your score report online, as well as if you got a paper report. Paper, it goes horizontal. Online, it goes vertical. Okay, here they are right here. It goes from 160 to 760. If you're in the green, then you're above the benchmark. If you're in the red, you need to strengthen those skills in that area. Now, the benchmark, just understand that they're just picking a number where they expect a student that if they got that benchmark, they would be doing pretty well in school, you know, B type of a grade. So that benchmark, again, I don't put a lot of stock into it because this is just a practice test. What's going to matter is where are you at after you prep and get ready for the test, okay? So those benchmarks are just kind of a barometer for you. Okay, so that barometer, it's best to be in the green, of course. Okay, well, I got a question. How close are the practice SATs to the actual SAT? Well, this is a PSAT, not a practice SAT, because there's no essay on it and it's fewer questions. So this was a PSAT, and they're very close. It's just the SAT is a little bit longer. There's more questions and a little bit harder math a lot of times, but they're very similar. And on the actual SAT, there's an essay. So those are the differences. I'll talk a little bit more in a second about it. And somebody asked, what is the first year of high school, sophomore, junior, that a student? Oh, you mean when? So the question is, I think you mean when should you take the SAT or ACT? I will get to that later. Okay, so I'm going to answer that later, when you should take the test, after I explain how to read the report. Okay, I will definitely do that. So here are your benchmarks, everybody. So again, math score, reading and writing, and your benchmarks. That's what a benchmark is, okay? It's, again, I wouldn't put a ton of stock into it. They're trying to crystal ball something, but a lot can change over time, and you can do some prep. Again, red, yellow, and green. They have this information online and on your score report where they give you the color key and what that means. So if you have any questions, just click on it online, and it'll show you. That's where it looks like on the paper report. So this sheet is the paper report. You're also going to see a percentile. Okay, so the percentile. Okay, so somebody's asking, Kristen, we're going to talk about percentiles right now. And Zach, you're talking about the SAT essay. I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I'm not going to get to it because it's not even a scored section that counts in this number score. So you might want to go to one of our SAT sessions or ACT sessions, and we'll get to that. So here, let's get into the percentiles because that's where we're on now. So these percentiles, now in your paper report, you're only going to get 1 on your paper report. Online, you're going to get 2. And if you look here, right here, this is on the paper report, that this student on math got a 47th percentile. So that means they scored better than 47% of your grade level to peers in the nation, okay? So understand that's just how they're ranking you. Again, your percentile doesn't mean anything until you actually take the test for real, the SAT or the ACT, and do that. Also, it's going to matter where you're going to college, how important that percentile, what level you're at. But your number score is where the schools are looking at, not your percentile, okay? The other thing, online, you're going to get a second percentile. So they're going to either match you nationally to kids who've taken the PSAT or match you naturally to just grade level. So you're going to get 2 percentiles, okay? All right, moving on here. We talked percentiles, and now you're going to get into all your different scores. And online, you're going to have it where you can actually click and check in a little bit more, and that's why it's really great to have those. All right, got a few more questions. Yeah, we'll talk about national merit in a second. I'll get there. We're not there yet, Colin. Okay. All right. And then somebody's asking about accommodations. Well, if you're going to take the SAT, you got to contact College Board for accommodations. If you're taking the ACT, you got to contact ACT for the accommodations. So you need to check in with them about the best way to go about doing it. If your school doesn't provide you with accommodations or different things like that, you're going to have to, there's a whole process. So if you email me individually later, I can give you a link to the accommodation link. But if you just go to collegeboard.org or act.org and look for accommodations, they'll talk to you about the best way about getting accommodations for these tests. So that's how you would handle it. Ultimately, it's actually going to go back to the school for accommodations, depending on what's happening at your school and what kinds of things that happen for you at the school. But it starts with understanding what the College Board, what kind of accommodations you can get. But you also need to understand, sometimes it's not always best to take the accommodations because sometimes extra time doesn't always help. It just makes it more stressful. So that's a whole separate conversation. Okay, so accommodations, go to the test writers, act.org, collegeboard.org. Okay, back to our score report, but great questions, keep them coming. So here's where you have the 3 top test scores. You have math, writing and language, and reading. The reading and writing and language combine into one total score, but they give you these sub-test scores that are out of 38. Okay, these are the 3 scores up here. Okay. Then down on the bottom left, you see on my screen, you're going to have a cross-test score in history and social science, or science and social studies. It's just telling you some of the questions you've answered and telling you some of your strengths and weaknesses. And now in the bottom right are these sub-scores. And I'll get a bigger slide for that one just because this is these sub-scores to the right here. You have command of evidence, heart of algebra. And so these sub-scores go up to 15. And it's just showing you what your strengths and weaknesses are. So this student had the most trouble in word expression of ideas and command of evidence. Okay. Now, when you go online, you'll be able to dig a little bit deeper when you actually go to the questions and see what actually one of those questions looks like. So that's really important. Okay. Really important. Another question, I look at the bottom scores, they are in yellow, but up top, the overall score is in green. So what does that mean? That's confusing. Well, in that particular, again, I'm not sure, Vina, where you're looking. It might be in one particular area you're in yellow, but overall you might be in green. That's possible. So you can be weak in really one area, but overall you're doing fine. So again, I don't know what it looks like. So if you either email me a screenshot, I can give you a better answer. But my guess is in a particular area or two, maybe you're below in yellow, but overall you seem to be doing fine. That happens when some people have, really high math scores and they're weak in one. That was me when I was in high school. But overall I was in the green, and my math was in the green, but my reading was probably in the yellow. Okay. All right, moving on. So these are what the subscores mean, the types of questions, and I'm only going to point out a couple. So for example, English conventions are about grammar and punctuations. Algebra is about equations and word problems. So again, when you dig deeper into your PSAT score, you can find what those subscores mean. Where am I messing? So if you did really poorly in English conventions, maybe your grammar and punctuation is very weak, okay? And that's what these reports are to help you to do. For my freshmen and sophomores, there's nothing you really need to do with it now. For my juniors, you're in it now. So if you're going to be testing soon, I really would suggest going back immediately and looking at this report and digging a little bit deeper. Here's a little spot on your score report online is you're able to, on the left side, okay, go into, I'm going to show you here. I'll spotlight it here. On this side is where it's telling you what you're very good at. On this side is what you need to improve. And if you see here, this is in the reading section. They give you the reading score. This is in the writing and language. We didn't click it yet online, so we don't know what that looks like. And this would be the math. So you just click the different tabs, and it'll take you to that subject area. Okay. So what you're weak in, and here's what you're weak in, and that's what you need to focus on. So it's going to give you some actual pinpointers about helping you on this test, which is really nice. Okay. All right. A couple more questions. Okay, I'm up to speed on all the questions, so great. Let's move on a bit. All right, so here we go now on next steps, and this would be in your paper report. It's the same idea where it's giving your strengths and weaknesses. On the left is your strengths and the right are your weaknesses. So if you had printed a paper report, that's what it would look like. Okay, so again, these scores right here down the middle, and online you would have these same 3 scores, are out of 38. These are in the specific subjects. Okay, this then equates to what your number score is going to be, whether you got a 380 on this and a 480 on math. That's what those numbers are. Okay, somebody asked earlier about timing wise, the PSAT 8-9, by the way, if you're my freshman on here, you actually had 20 minutes less time, and there were some fewer questions. So when you take the test in a year or two, you'll have more questions. It'll just get a little bit harder and more questions. So somebody asked about national merit, so we'll talk about that. And this only applies to juniors. You can only win the scholarship as a junior. But what I'm going to do is point out to you that it's very few and far between that people get this, so I wouldn't put a lot of stock into it. They're going to give you a selection index number here. So this student got a 124, and I'll show you how to add that up for you, but you'll have a number here, okay? Now, again, understand that it's not that easy to get it, but your selection index is taken out of these 8 to 38 scores, and what they do is they add them all up. So let's just say you got a 30, 30, and a 30. So that would be 30 in reading, plus 30 in writing, plus 30 in math. That would be 90. And then you would multiply that too. So this, if you got 30, 30, 30, you would have a 180 selection index. This student got a 124 because they got 18, 20, and 24. Okay. The way it plays out, again, it's very hard to get it. So if you're on my call now and you don't have in the 220s, you're probably not even going to get it or get a semifinalist. So out of the there's probably 1.67 million that take this test. And it's state by state. Last year in California, actually this number here, 221, was 2 years ago. This last fall was 222. I expect next year to be 223. 228 is the top. So basically you're barely missing any questions. Okay. So, but the process is, if you're in a really good range, which I would say to be a semifinalist or commended, you would probably need it to be 215 to 220. Okay. So if you're not there, don't worry about it. Again, most people don't get it. We only had a couple people in our district end up at the end. So again, it's very rare. So it's not a big deal if you don't get it. This does not have anything to do with college admissions if you don't get it. It's a great, nice thing that you get some money at the end if you are one of those scholars that are chosen, but it's less than 1%. Okay, so just know that national merit is very difficult. If you're a junior now, I would probably, again, if you're not in the 220 range, then don't worry about it. Just let's move on, okay? So the most important part of this whole thing, this whole test, is your question level feedback, okay? And the best thing about it is when you go online, you can actually review all the answers you put. You can see the questions. You'll be able to go online and do that. So this is what it would look like. And you have all the question numbers here, all the correct answers, and then what you put. If there are check marks, you got it right. Here's the key. So again, everything is detailed for you. You just got to know where to look online. But they have the key for you. They have if you know, on number 2, this student got it wrong. They put A and it was B. You can click on that question and then go to the question and find out why you got it wrong. What did you put and what was the correct answer? And then it's going to give you some of these subscores. That's how they develop these subscores. So number 2 was a COE, which was a command of evidence question. This really helps pinpoint some of your strengths and weaknesses and actually go back to the questions and find out, did I make a careless error? Did I not understand the question? Did I misbubble it? Who knows why you got something wrong? And for my juniors, it's really, really recommended that you go and you do this, okay? And then what you get to do, again, when you pull up a question, they'll give you the whole question, and then in this part here, you can see what you got right or wrong, and then they actually give you an explanation. So identify those questions you got incorrect, find out why, and then this is going to help you become a better test taker, okay? All right. The other part, and this is my favorite part of the whole thing, is you can filter the questions. So right here, it's going to tell you how many total questions in that section in reading, how many correct, incorrect, how many blank, and then easy, medium, or difficult. Okay, they'll actually point out easy, medium, or difficult for you. And you can filter by all easy questions. One thing to know, I tell this to a lot of my students, is are you missing a lot of easy questions? If you are, you're probably rushing through the test, and that's not a good way to take the test. You can also filter by the subscore. Let's look at all my Heart of Algebra questions. I can look at all the difficulty questions. Do I get them all wrong? And then you start to learn what kind of tester you are through this process of exploring your answers, and that's really important. So this is the most valuable part of the online report that you can't do in a paper form, I mean, unless you have your test booklet. But they also don't give you the explanation in the paper. This allows you to get an explanation as well. So I highly recommend my juniors go and do this, okay? It's really valuable and really important. The other part of the report that you're going to get, and your schools should be sending you a letter home, but it's about AP potential. If you've taken the test and certain areas, if you've done well on, it's going to recommend that you might be not eligible, but they might recommend you taking an AP course at your school based on your results. And that just kind of helps, you know, the fact that, again, challenging classes and rigor plays a large role in more competitive college admissions. And by taking AP courses, you're allowing yourself to do that. Now, granted, if you're doing a ton of other things, you might not have time to have a bunch of AP courses, but this is pointing you in some direction for taking some of those and maybe some of those subjects based on your report, okay? So that's AP potential. The other great thing about this report is you have the ability to go to Khan Academy, sync this up with your PSAT report, and get additional practice. So on Khan Academy, you have full-length tests, there's videos, there's explanations, you get interactive problems, and in addition, you'll get a personalized practice plan based on your PSAT score. So for my juniors, I recommend you do that. For my sophomores, if you go down the SAT path, this summer would be a great time to link this up and start doing some practice on that. And this is how you do it. You go into College Board to collegeboard.org, okay? After you create, in step one, you're creating a Khan Academy account. And then when you sign into College Board, they'll ask you to authorize the linking with Khan Academy. And then when you do that here, you'll see this request for approval, and you'll just click send, and you're able to do that, okay? So link that up and get that personalized practice. Take more practice tests. That's going to be helpful, okay? And I'll talk about some more prepping pointers later, okay? So with that said, that's kind of the report, the stuff I wanted to go over. I'm going to move into kind of the second part of understanding when you should take your SAT or ACT. Somebody asked that earlier, and maybe some of the differences between the tests and picking a path to do that. If you have to leave, no problem. I will record this. Also, February 6th, I'm doing a webinar, and hopefully the technology will work then, on your optimal timeline for SAT or ACT. And that's all about picking the right track for you. So you can come back on that on February 6th, and hopefully everything's working, okay? All right, so moving on. Any questions on the PSAT report that you might have? Anybody? Because then I'm going to move on to this part, okay? All right, great. So one thing I need you to understand is that you can take the SAT or the ACT. Back in my day, a lot of times it was one or the other, okay? Oh, we got one more question here. Yeah, this will all be recorded, and it'll be on our website, so you can watch it back. And you know, we also have, I have the version I did last year. So it's on it right now. The PSAT Now What is from last year. That one would be very applicable as well. So if you go to CUSD-Futureology.org, where you actually register for the event, there is a tab that says Resource Locker, and you go there, and it has all our webinars we've ever done and recorded. This is the first one that I've ever had tech difficulties, so it's unfortunate, but you'll be able to get it there. So if you have to leave, I understand, okay? All right, so again, SAT or ACT, you only have to do one. You don't have to do both, because colleges will accept either one. You could put your best test foot forward by taking the one you're going to be better suited for, whether you are suited for one or another. So when we look at SAT or ACT, my recommendation is you take one. We'll talk about timing in a second, okay? Now, the matter is, well, which one then? Okay, so here's some differences between the tests. The ACT, if you haven't ever seen it, the SAT scored out of 1600, the ACT out of 36. It's a very similar test in terms of the content. There are some differences though, okay? Now, some of the differences, and the content is very similar. There's reading and writing or English, there's math. The ACT has a science section, okay, so that is different. They both have an optional essay. One of the biggest differences is the time per section. The SAT is a little bit more time friendly. So those who struggle with time pressure might not like the ACT as much, okay? But that's one of the differences. Scoring is a little different. I said timing is a different. But determining which one you're better suited for, okay? Here are just some of the differences. So for example, if you're a weaker math student, then maybe ACT is better for you. Or if you're a strong reader, maybe ACT is better, because there's more reading on the ACT than the SAT. Those are just some things that are different. My recommendation to you is to figure it out is actually take a practice test to find out, because you have a PSAT score now. So if you have 1,000 on your PSAT and you took a practice ACT, we can compare those results and determine which test you're better suited for, if at all there is a preference, okay? So for example, let's just say you took a practice ACT now. We know your PSAT score, let's just say it's 1,200, okay? and you took an ACT and you scored a 29, you're actually better suited for the ACT, just based on the numbers and the concordance. This is a concordance table. So knowing that, you should take the ACT. If you fall in the blue, you take the SAT. That's how you should move forward with it. If it's in the gray, then it's a judgment call. So then it's based on your preference. What did you like better? What did you prefer? What kinds of questions? And that would be then based on your preference. So when you're choosing your timeline, and this is what I'm going to spend a lot of time on the February 6th presentation, is really talking about your timeline. Okay. So again, if we start with our strength, which one we're better suited for, go down that path. But if you don't have a strength either way, then choose it by preference. So that's where you want to go with that. Now, if you don't want to take all the time and you're a junior now, and we just want to figure it out now, here's a really simple rule of thumb. If your math score on your PSAT is better, okay, take the SAT. And here's why. We'll go back to this slide here. Let me go back here. It's because if you see the scoring here, reading and writing is half and math is half on the SAT. Okay, folks, that's huge. On the ACT, math is only a quarter. So if you're better on math, then taking the SAT, where it counts for 50% of your score, is a good thing to do. Okay, that's one way to figure out if you're better on one test or another. It's just as simple as that, using your PSAT score. So again, PSAT, math preference, stick with the SAT. If reading is your preference and you're much better and based on your scores, 100% points higher, then you might want to try the ACT, because there's a reading section and English section, and the science actually is more reading than science. Okay, so that's what I would recommend. So then the next step, when we talk about next step, is defining your goal score. So once you've figured out which tests you should take, then we need to figure out what kind of score do I need to get? Not just randomly. So, the other day I was talking to a kid and they're like, I think 1450 is a good score. Well, I don't know where you want to go to school, if that's a good score or not. It's going to be based on what your goal score is, based on some of the schools you have. And here's some schools. This is just one slide. Okay. So when we look at this, so for example, let's just say I'm interested in NYU, and I'm scored my PSAT. I scored, let's say 1100 over here, 1110. Well, NYU's way up here. So your goal score might be 14 something, but you're only at 1100 now. You have a lot of work to do ahead of you. So defining your goal score will help set a plan in motion. So the kid that you want to go from here all the way up to here, that doesn't happen in a weekend. That takes a lot of time and energy, a couple months, 2 to 3 months, 10 hours a week of prepping to get there. That's a huge jump. That's going to determine what type of prep plans you're going to need. Okay, so define your goal score, really huge in helping us move you along in the proper path. Here's just some more schools. Again, I'm going to move through it quick. And then it's a matter of finding the best time to take the test. So really quickly, my juniors, you guys have the rest of this year, you have March, but if you want a big jump, that only gives you about a month. So I wouldn't recommend that if you need a big jump. If you need 20, 30 points, then maybe. But if you need a couple hundred points, you're probably better off taking the May or the June test. And it's always good to get one under your belt before the end of junior year. And then the recommendation would be your second test would be in August or the latest October, because I like my students to be done and applying in this time frame, not testing. If you're taking the ACT, my juniors, then April would be a good. February is too close, so April or June. Okay. July is not available for California students, so you can't take the ACT in July. So those would be some time frames. For my sophomores, if you've completed Algebra 2 and you're on the college prep track, this summer is probably a good time to prep. So for my sophomores, then in the summer, rising juniors, your best time frame to take your tests are right around here. So it's actually coming up sooner than later for you. Okay, so that gives you a chance to get ahead of the game and doing some summer prep while you're not in school. Okay, So those are some next steps and when. So somebody had asked that question. Hopefully that answers for it. So talking about next steps, and we'll talk a little bit about prepping in a second, but I need you to compare your test scores and determine which tests you should take. Create a plan, okay? So create a plan on your colleges and defining your goal score. And for my juniors, you even want to start exploring some career options so you know what schools, if they would have what you want. Take challenging courses, everybody. Set up a prep plan for what you do based on your goal score. Register for the test. So my juniors, you're going to need to register, okay, very soon. And then start researching your college matches, and then start meeting with your counselors, whether they're your advisors or with one-on-one with your Futureology counselors, okay? And then if you wanted to, my friends at Rev Prep, there's a free practice test on our website, or you can actually go Rev Prep will allow you to grab one from them. You can reach out to Christy, and here's her email. Again, these slides will be, or this recording will be online, so you could always get her information or take a quick snapshot of this. But if you want to take a practice test from them, they'll score it for you. And you can do that. It's free, really easy. Or you can just go to our website right here, CUSD-Futureology.org, college/admissions test, and we have a free practice ACT. I also have a free prep resource handout with a lot of good websites, a lot of apps you can use, some books I like, and some other prep tools that you have, okay? And let me show it. For my juniors, I'm also doing a free self-paced prep that a couple friends of mine and I did some videos. If you go onto our website and register for that, you'll be able to grab some of those videos. So all this for my juniors, this would be a really great chance if you're doing some stuff. Now, little caveat is this is for beginners. If you're looking for 400 points improvement, you're going to need to do more than this, okay? All right, so with prepping and preparing for this test, and then we'll wrap it up, is a lot of students don't put any time into it. They spend most of their time academically, which is what you should do, but they spend less than 10 hours prepping for this test, which doesn't translate into great scores. If you spend less than 10 hours total on this test, don't expect to go up 300 points or 4 points on the ACT. Expect a small increase, if at any. 10 hours isn't a lot. But if you're going to choose some prep, you can do some self-study, which I showed you that online thing that we're providing at no cost, or Khan Academy, and your PSAT score is some self-study. You can take a class or you can work with a tutor. Whichever one you choose, make sure it's realistic to your goal. A lot of times self-study doesn't get you 400 points because it's hard to do it on your own. You need some type of trainer or tutor or class, okay? All right, so a couple more pointers and then we'll wrap it up. Is when you look at your PSAT score, some of the things that I tell people to do is take a look, are you missing easy questions? Like I said, if you're rushing through the test, you might need to work on your pacing plan, which is more than content. This test is not just an academic test. It's a strategic test. It's about your mental capacity and how you can handle this. And so we need to perfect your strategy as well. So if you have content, great. But you also need to know which content am I good at. So for example, on your math section, if you're really bad at the geometry questions, then instead of doing those, skip them, do the ones you're really good at. And then we call that personal order of difficulty right here. So strategically, actually, if you watch our videos and our self-paced prep, you'll hear about some of this stuff, so I would watch those. And you also got to learn strategy and some methods of how you actually do something. And then build on that practice. You got to do a lot of practice tests to really improve your score. You can't just go in and hope to do well. You got to practice it. Most people train, whether you play an instrument, whether you play, or you're an athlete or something. There's some training involved, then competing, and then going back to the drawing board and working on what you need to fix. And you got to keep doing that process over and over again. Okay, so keep that in mind. Here's some other great resources I have about testing questions and a grade level checklist, things that you need to be doing along the way. So take a look at that. Again, it's on our website under college and readiness checklists. All right. And then here's some upcoming events we have. All right. I told you on February 6th right here, I'm doing another webinar and building your optimal timeline, which will really break down when you should take your test. and break down, should you wait a minute, or I kind of just spend all my time timelining, okay? All right, with that said, I'm going to wrap that up, open it up to some questions here. And remember, again, if you want to set up, if you're a junior too, even a freshman or sophomore, set up a one-on-one. We can have an appointment with you, my counselors and I, or attend a lot of our events and see us there and ask us some questions. So I'm going to open it up. And again, I really thank you for your patience while we had that tech snafu, but hopefully at least you got something out of it tonight. And I'll be able to, answer those questions. Or again, if you want to email me afterwards, I'm happy to help direct you if I can. So questions from you guys. Sue, I don't know if your hand's up for a question, but you can either ask it or chat it in or put it in the question area. And if not, no questions for you and you're ready to go, you feel free to go, okay? Anybody? I know, Zach, if you're still around, the essay and while I'm waiting for another question, you can, if you go to collegeboard.org or you go to Khan Academy, you can actually look up practice SATs and see some of the questions there. So I would suggest you do that. But again, it's an optional thing. I recommend people take the optional essay if they don't know where they want to apply, just in case the school says we want the essay. But there's a lot of schools who don't require it. Okay, so if you know the schools you want to apply to, you might not even need that. But again, you can go and see what a typical SAT essay is about and check it out, okay? There's a certain strategy to employ if you're actually going to do that. But again, it doesn't go into your number score. Okay, a couple questions. How many times can a student take each exam? Is there a max? Well, again, I would only take the SAT or ACT. I wouldn't go back and forth. That's not a good plan. The magic number for me is 3. Okay, so if you are a sophomore, going to be rising junior, you take it in the summer, let's say August, take your SAT in August, then take it again maybe in the fall, and then maybe one more time spring of junior year, and then you're done. 3 would be the max. There is an advantage of taking them multiple times because some schools will look at your highest sitting. Some will super score it where they take the best of each subject area. But again, if you're not going to prep properly, there's no point in retaking the test, even if they have those advantages of taking the test again. But I wouldn't take it more than 3 times max. Ideally, once and then maybe a second time, okay? Colin wants to know how we register for the self-paced prep. Actually, I'll just show you online how to do it. It's just like when you registered for this event. It's on that same page to the right, but I'll actually show you and share my screen. So, but before I do that, Colin, let me answer. Ayush asked about if you give both SAT tests, can you choose which test score to share? Okay, I'm not even going to answer that in the sense that I don't want you taking both, and there's a real reason why. You can use score choice, of course, but again, you're going to waste time, energy, money, and all that. There's no point in doing that. But if you want to go down that path, I don't recommend it. You're actually fighting a losing battle, and it's going to hurt you more than help you in the sense that it's taking time away from other things. So again, I don't recommend it, but some schools want every single score, and some schools will take your best score or only ask you for your top score, but you'll have to find out from those schools, okay? The rising juniors over the summer will be able to do this same thing. And then there's paid for prep. You can pay for prep, but we don't do a paid for prep option. So, so you would do the same thing over the summer and access this if you want to do that. So let me actually share my screen. I'm going to share my desktop. All right, I'm going to show Colin how he actually. All right, I'm going to share my. Okay, so Colin asked, and everybody you want to know, how do I register for the prep? How do you register for Futureology stuff? You go to our website at Futureology, so hopefully you can see this. Under appointments and events, guys, you'll be able to see to the left, schedule 101. To the right are all the events that we have. So the self-paced prep thing is under February. You could start registering for that. You just click on register and it'll take you where you need to go. So that's what you would do. Again, in the resource locker is where we have all our webinars archived. So here's the PSAT Now What from last year, and then my slide deck. Here it is. Okay, so go check that out right there. Okay, I'm going to get back to some questions. So a few more questions. And since the district is not offering the pre-ACT, what is the best way to take that so we can decide between SAT or ACT? Great question, Tammy. Again, I gave you that resource on my slide. So let me share that again. Is if you go to our website, actually, I'll just go back here. If you go to our website, you can take a practice. If you can see it here, you go to college admissions test. There's a practice ACT right there. Okay, so there's a practice ACT right here. Haven't taken the practice ACT? Go there, click there. It's an ACT.org test. Okay, I also gave you, if you were there, Revolution Prep. You can get Revolution Prep's exam. Okay, so I'll show you that slide again. So if you want to go to our website and grab it, or if you want to use Revolution Prep's test, they'll let you take one. Where did I have that? There it is. Okay. Oh. There it is. I'm almost there. There it is. So you can go to and contact Christy, and she'll give you one. So you can go to our website, or you can go to Christy. Either way is free. Okay. All right. More questions. I will stay here.